So welcome everyone, and today we have quite an interesting topic, and it's a topic that we actually cover a lot when it comes to discussing career opportunities with people. So I mean, especially you get a lot of people coming to you wanting to get into the development world, but the question that every single one of them has at one point or the other is, what programming language do I learn? And there's no shortage of programming languages. There are dozens and dozens and dozens. Some are good for certain things, some are good for other things. So today we're going to give our list of the top 10 programming languages that we think you should get into this year. And this is based on the demand and the job scope for them, as well as how useful and versatile they are.
Yeah, and it's not just about what is our favorite programming language. It's not a subjective thing. It's very objective, and you can make an informed decision based on the information that we give you. Ultimately, the decision is yours. I mean, there's no such thing as the best programming language. Each one is good for its own purpose. You know, it's like there's no such thing as the best fruit or the best veggie. All have their benefits. But you just have to choose what's right for you. So it's something that what makes it difficult, what adds layers of complexity to it, is the fanboys out there. These people that are religious fanatists. I don't know what's the word for it. Who put down other languages and say, well, Python is the best and Java is the worst and PHP sucks and JavaScript sucks. No, it's not like that. It's not like that at all. A good developer will see every language for what it's good for and base a career on what is the most expedient thing to do based on where you live, the type of work you want to get into, the type of company you want to work for, the country you want to work in. Yeah, so those are big major considerations.
It's not like there's a one shoe fits all when it comes to programming languages. The language you choose is going to depend on what you want to build, what you want to develop.
Absolutely, and you can't go wrong. That's the disclaimer we need to make from the start. You can't go wrong with any one of these top 10 languages. It's just you need to know, you need to have self-awareness in a sense of the questions that I asked. What kind of work you want to do, where you want to work, and then you focus your learning on that. And I can see where a lot of people get very intimidated by different languages, because it's a significant investment in time and effort to learn the entire ecosystem of a language and everything that goes with it. But that's also not something to be too worried about. And I'll tell you why. As a seasoned software engineer myself, I can tell you this much, that when you've learned the entire ecosystem of one language, like C#, for example, and you have to migrate to Java, it's not that big a jump. Trust me, it's not such a major jump, because you understand the concepts, you understand the structures, you understand the whole concepts of APIs or 3-tier applications, MVC applications, and what goes where. And that pretty much applies across all languages. So it's not like you starting from zero and rebooting your knowledge and starting with something new. So don't be too intimidated by it. But let's get down to it. Let's get down to the languages.
Cool. So at the top of our list, or at the top of my list, is JavaScript. And this is purely based on how widely used it is and how versatile it is. So I remember reading something like 98% or 98.5% of all websites on the internet use JavaScript in some way or the other.
There's no surprise there, because I mean, JavaScript is a language that was designed for the web. It was specifically designed to create, to enable interactivity on web pages. And JavaScript is probably the oldest on your list now. I'm not really sure, but it's a very old language. It has been around for some time.
Correct. And when it comes to versatility, it's an extremely versatile language. I mean, you use it for obviously your web development. Frameworks like Node.js, you can use it for server-side development.
Which is great, which is a fairly recent addition to JavaScript, which gives JavaScript so much more capabilities, immense capabilities now with object orientation coming in and Node.js coming in. You can now write full stack applications in JavaScript, which you couldn't do a few years ago, which makes JavaScript all that more capable now.
And I think probably one of the biggest advantages of JavaScript is when you use it in conjunction with HTML and CSS, you form the HTML5 programming language.
Yeah.
Which is, IT varsity students will be very, very familiar with this, but for those who aren't, it's a cross-platform app development language.
Yeah, and before we go ahead, now I want you guys to talk to us. I don't want this to be a monologue. This is why this is a webinar, not a pre-recorded video. What's your favorite programming language? Obviously, I know one is from a work perspective, but there's the other aspect that as a coder, there's certain languages that you're just happy coding in, that just makes you feel like you meant to do this. Now, I have the one which is Java. Java is my thing. I enjoy coding JavaScript, but Java is definitely my thing. If I have an option to code in any language, it would be Java. What's yours? Have you coded? Have you enjoyed any language in particular? Put it in the comments. I want to know.
Oddly enough, mine is also Java.
All right.
It was actually the first programming language I learned, and it's still my comfort language. Whenever I want to do a small personal project on my own, it's most of the time in Java.
Yeah, I mean, I just absolutely love Java. I love Java for the precise reason that a lot of people hate it, for its rigidity and its very strictness on the variable types. I mean, you can't, for example, declare an integer and then attempt to put a string into it. Java will be like, hey, no, you can't do that. Damn it, what's wrong with you? That's the but JavaScript will like, okay, we'll allow it. But it's good to have that flexibility with JavaScript, but it can give you problems down the line, because then you're gonna end up with a problem with the wrong types of variables being passed to functions and things, and it can get very, very messy.
Yeah. But that's just the thing with I think all of the languages that we're going to talk about today. They all have their advantages and their disadvantages. So again, it's not an objective thing that one language is better than the other. It's going to depend on the developer.
It depends on the developer, and it depends on what you are trying to do, what application you want to build. That's very, very important.
Okay, so number 2 on our list, and this is, I know you're not gonna be too happy about this one, but it's Python. Now Python it's fairly new, and it wasn't really popular for a while after its release, but in recent years it's skyrocketed in popularity. I think primarily in the machine learning and AI fields. Yeah. That's where it's used. So I think your apps like YouTube and Instagram and Facebook, they're back-end algorithms that figure out what kind of content you're interested in, so they can recommend more appropriate content to you, and they can figure out what kind of ads to show you. Those are built on Python.
Yeah. Well, let's take a step back. Let's take a step back. We haven't properly wrapped up JavaScript, right? Why would you learn JavaScript? Answer is very simple. If you want to get into web application development, you go with JavaScript. There is no better option than JavaScript. I mean, pretty much every web app that you use, the YouTube app, for example, the front end of the app is JavaScript, or something more interactive like Office 365, Microsoft's Office 365. Those are all built with JavaScript front end. So just bear that in mind. So if you want to get into web or mobile, cross-platform mobile. Cross-platform mobile means apps that you write once and run anywhere. You can run it on Android and on iOS devices. If you want to get into that space, both of which are amazing spaces to get into, you will obviously go with JavaScript, because JavaScript with frameworks like React and Angular, you can do mobile application development. That's very important.
And with frameworks like Phaser.js, you can build mobile games with JS.
Yeah, and then finally Node. Where do you use Node? Now Node, although you can write full stack JavaScript applications, Node is particularly useful in real-time applications. For example, a control software for a drone. Now that is not like a bank software where occasionally the database is updated and then the connection is closed and then the connection is reopened and you pull out data, and it's not like that. This is real time. So if you're talking about, if you need a software to monitor and control a drone, or you need chat, very intense live chat features, then you'd use something like Node.js with probably a JavaScript front end. Okay, then coming to Python, like you said, if you want to get into AI, definitely Python is a good way to go. But look, there are frameworks for doing full stack applications with Python, and if you want to get into those, look, I would prefer, honestly, I would prefer Java or .NET for backend applications. But people are developing applications, full stack applications with Python now. So there is a market for that if you want to get into that.
There is, and again, when it comes to machine learning and artificial intelligence, Python isn't the only option. In fact, for the longest time, languages like Java and JavaScript were used in those capacities. Yeah. So it is possible, but Python, I think, because of its ease, has gained a lot of popularity. But there are other options available if you're not interested in getting into Python.
Yeah, and then, I mean, when you look at languages like Python and JavaScript, they are a lot easier to learn and get going with. So definitely a plus there.
Cool, and that brings us into our number 3 spot, the third spot on the podium, which is Java. And I think a lot of people would have probably guessed that by now, that our top 3 list would have included Java. And again, it's just because of how powerful it is. And you know, it's used for anything from small mobile apps to enterprise level applications.
Yeah, Java used to be the king of the hill at one stage. It used to be the boss of all languages because for its time it was a very advanced language. Java actually started out life as an addition to C++. It was, or rather, an improvement to C++. And C++, till today, no matter what you say, is still the king of the hill. It's like the mother of all languages right now. It's where pretty much every language derives from, including Java. But there were some limitations on C++ that the creators of Java tried to address, and they created this program called Java, which was supposed to be called Oak, by the way, O-A-K.
Is it?
And then, yeah, and then they decided to make it a more catchy name, which is Java. And interestingly enough, because Java did so well, Netscape, the creators of JavaScript, named their language JavaScript, but there's no relation between them at all. It was just a marketing ploy by Netscape to make JavaScript more popular. So there's no relation between the two. They're not even similar. They don't even if anything, they are polar opposites of each other in terms of the rigid structure of the language. You know, Java is like a German policeman. One thing you do offline and guys at you. And JavaScript is like, chill, man, no, don't stress it. I'm here for you. And if something goes wrong, it dies quietly, but Java goes screaming. So that's very important to remember. JavaScript and Java are not the same. Coming back to Java, it was the king of the hill for a simple reason that Java was the first to embrace this concept of write once, run anywhere. So you could write a Java application and run it on a phone or a computer or even a freaking microwave oven, and it would work the same. It's the way that Java programs were structured. But now when things are getting more you know, how can I say, more focused on web and mobile, that's where you got these other competitors coming in. But Java, in many ways, is still the king of the hill. For you know, what I noticed about the Java ecosystem, and this is because I'm biased, but also there is evidence of that. C#, Microsoft's core .NET language, was actually almost a clone of Java, and there was a lawsuit between the creators of Java and Microsoft, right? And then, so they kind of cloned Java, and you know, they made changes, but not to run down C#. It's become a force to be reckoned with on its own. It's become a beautiful language on its own, and they have, although they started very similar, they have kind of drifted apart, and C# has come of age. But even now, a lot of the other languages take inspiration from Java. Things happen in Java, they tend to happen in Java first.
Yeah.
And then the others tend to follow, with the exception of maybe .NET, because Microsoft has put have made significant innovations. But still, there's a lot of things happening in the Java space that others are still playing catch up with.
Yeah, and the thing I think that Java has over most of the other languages is the size of its community and support base. Because it's been around for so long and because of how popular it's become, there's frameworks available for just about anything. So whether if you want to develop games with Java, by the way, you can use Java for game development. The popular game, I think it's the most popular game in the world of all time, Minecraft, was built on Java.
But it's been subsequently shifted now.
Yeah. But so if you want to get into game development, there's a framework for that. If you want to get into enterprise development, there's frameworks for that. If you want to get into mobile development, there's frameworks for that. And those just make development a whole lot easier and more streamlined.
Remember, Android native apps are written in Java, just like iOS native apps are written in either Java or Kotlin. But Kotlin is similar to Java. It's a branded version of Java.
We'll actually get into Kotlin a little bit later down on the list.
Okay. Now, not to get too much into Kotlin. So yeah, so like as he says, very flexible language. You will not go wrong with Java. If you focus on Java, focus on Java applications, that's the best. There's nothing, I beg your pardon, you can't go wrong with that. Most of the Java jobs in South Africa are in Johannesburg. That's a thing to remember. If you want to live in the coast, in Durban and Cape Town, you're gonna have a hard time finding a job.
Cool. So number 4 on our list, and we touched on this one briefly, is C#, which, as you mentioned, was a clone of Java. So it's a very similar programming language, or it started off as, but it has branched off on its own, and it has its own ecosystem around it. I think primarily around the .NET framework.
So the thing with C# is that the peculiarity of C# is that it works within the .NET framework. So C# is owned by Microsoft, and the .NET framework was developed by them. And it's definitely my second favorite language for coding, and because the .NET framework is just so tightly integrated together, it's beautiful. And the work that Microsoft has done with it recently is amazing. It's really, really amazing, really fascinating stuff they've done. And they've made it so easy. And now with Microsoft being a major investor in ChatGPT, I'm waiting to see how they'll integrate GPT with even the .NET framework.
Yeah.
That's going to be very interesting. And with C#, you can build Windows applications, games, server-side applications, really, really amazing stuff.
Again, very versatile. And you'll notice the languages on the top 4 so far have all had that in common. They are very versatile languages that you can use for more than one type of application. But there are times, obviously, where you'd want to specialize. And I think that's where some of the languages lower down on our list come in. For example, number 5, which is PHP.
Yeah. PHP, definitely a language I enjoy programming. I did my first web-based applications in PHP. This was in the days prior to WordPress. I had built a content management system for a client that's similar to WordPress, and I built it in PHP. PHP, unfortunately, is one of those languages that gets an unnecessary amount of flack from fanboys of other languages, and I don't like that. I don't entertain that kind of nonsense talk. I mean, PHP runs WordPress, Moodle, WooCommerce, and these are the biggest applications on the web right now. WordPress is the biggest CMS by far. The second biggest CMS, if I'm not mistaken, is okay, I forgot the name of it. But Moodle is the biggest learning management system in the world.
I mean, again, like 80% of all websites on the internet have PHP in them somewhere.
Yeah.
So it's a really powerful language, and while not as versatile as the other ones, it has its role, and it does that role really, really well.
It does.
That's why it's so popular.
It does it well, and it gives you the flexibility of being a scripting language as well as part of a framework as an object-oriented, strictly object-oriented language. You can use a framework like Laravel and develop very, very, very complex PHP applications, PHP APIs. So it's a good language. It's a very good language. Again, it's one of those languages that you can't go wrong with. And you typically use it when you want to do not just web applications, but if you want to do plugins for other web frameworks like WordPress and Moodle, it's very useful. So another language that it's going to be hard to go wrong with if you really delve into it.
Cool. And moving on to number 6, I think we should start pushing through these because of time. But the number 6 on our list is C++.
Okay, so C++. Okay, continue, because there's a comment here from January Mulele, who says the first programming language I learned was C++, and I think I only enjoy it because I'm familiar with it. So
yeah, as we mentioned before, C and then C++, which is an improvement on C, are the grandfather languages to many of the modern languages used. I mean, Java, JavaScript, C# were all descendants of C++. So that should tell you how powerful C++ is and how versatile it is on its own.
Incredibly powerful, difficult to learn, especially pointers. January, you might know what I'm talking about with pointers. C++ pointers are hard. Java did away with that. The difference between C and C++ is C++ brought object-oriented programming into C, and so it became C++. You know, in coding languages, when you put a variable ++, it's an iteration +1. So C++ is +1, and Java would be C+++. If there was such thing. No, there isn't such a thing. There isn't such a thing. Okay, so January, lovely language to learn. However, for you, a transition to Java won't be that hard, and I would recommend that, especially in the South African market, because C++ jobs are not that common globally, in fact, but especially in South Africa. There has been a resurgence. There was a resurgence, but I don't know how far that went. Of C++.
And I think C++ is reserved for really large-scale projects. So things like your web browsers or apps like graphic softwares like Inkscape or Photoshop or Blender.
I wouldn't say large scale. I would say high performance.
High performance would be a better word.
Yeah, where you need high performance, extreme high performance, like if you're creating a 3D gaming engine or an application, then C++ is definitely your way to go. Unfortunately, there's not much of that being done in South Africa or Africa for that matter.
Yes, so that's why it ranked 6th on our list, despite its versatility and power.
Yeah, it's 6th mostly in demand, but look, there is a demand overseas. If you are planning to go and work overseas, or you're planning to do some freelance work for companies in other countries, then that would be the way to go. Before we go ahead, there's a question from Zoya. To get into coding, do we need to know all these programming languages? Zoya, absolutely not. You choose one, and if you are completely new to coding, I would recommend starting with JavaScript. It's a very nice language to get started with. It teaches you the basics, and if you sign up for Entrepreneur, you will do JavaScript quite a bit in detail, and you'll become a very competent JavaScript programmer by doing the Entrepreneur course. So once again, you don't have to learn all these. No ways, please. No one knows all of these. I mean, I myself know about 3 or 4 of these. That's it. I don't know all of these. So I am Rambo says, so personally, which language should we learn? Yes, pass the buck to me. Again, I would say start with HTML5, which is HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Get to grips with that. Understand that well, and that's what we cover in Entrepreneur, in the National Certificate in Systems Development here at IT Varsity. and then take your knowledge to Java. Now that combination will make you what is known as a full stack developer. A full stack developer is a person who can develop front end and back end application. The front end is what the user sees, and the back end is what goes on the server. Maybe we should have a conversation about that in the future. What is front end versus back end? So I would say CSS, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, become proficient there, and then go into Java or .NET. Again, my preference would be Java. So Dimakatsu says the first programming language I learned was C# and then some Python. Dimakatsu, you probably learned C# at one of the universities, if I'm guessing correctly, because the universities teach C#, which is great. Unfortunately, schools teach Delphi. Delphi is not even on our list. Don't even get me started with schools. Okay, let's continue with the list. We are running out of time.
Cool. Okay, so the next one, number 7, this one is again a very specialized language used for very specific roles, and it's SQL, which is used for database management.
Yeah, so there's two ways of saying that, SQL or SQL. I prefer saying SQL, it just rolls off the tongue easily. And there's religious fights between, I can't believe how petty people can be. Okay, you want to say SQL, I want to say SQL, so what? It's the same thing. Yeah, that's a language specifically for database manipulation, design, development, manipulation.
I think it's a fantastic language to get in on your own, but I think web developers should have it in their arsenal, even if it's just to a very small capacity. But it can certainly help with, if you're getting into, for example, developing plugins for Moodle or for WordPress. Sometimes having a rough knowledge on SQL or SQL can help.
It will definitely help, but not to forget that getting into a dedicated SQL programming career is also very good. It's niche, but remember big data and data analytics. Right. Well, SQL plays a big role in that, because remember, no matter what language you're using on the front end, the guy that's doing the work in the back end, retrieving all that data, is SQL. That's, of course, if you're using a relational database, because nowadays there's also non-relational databases, which, let's leave that for another conversation, which are good in their own right.
Cool. Okay, then number 8 is Kotlin, and we mentioned this briefly. So Kotlin is a really new language. It's come out fairly recently and has been increasing in popularity, but as you mentioned earlier, it's like a simplified version of Java. In fact, Kotlin is 100% compatible with Java. I think the intention was to make development with Java a lot
particularly
easier.
For Android.
Yeah. And again, because it's Java, it can be used for web apps, and I think even the logic can be imported into iOS applications. Some people are doing that, but it's primarily used for Android app development, just to make it a little bit easier.
Cool. So, I mean, why would you go with a native language on a device? Kotlin, and I see you've got Swift coming up next. Swift is the language for iOS development, for developing mobile apps for Apple devices. When you need an app that's highly performant, you'd obviously write in the native language. But to me, it makes more sense that as far as possible, you use a JavaScript framework like React Native, because you write the one app and you deploy both sides. If you write an app in Kotlin, you can't run that app on iOS, and if you write an app in Swift, obviously you can't run it on an Android device. So the win-win is JavaScript and its frameworks like React Native.
Cool. Yeah, and then that brings us into number 9, which is Swift. Which this again it has a very large market, but it's niched because it's only used for developing apps for the iOS platform. That's your iPhones and iPads. So it's powerful, but that's going to be the only thing you can do with it. So if that's what you want to get into, it's the perfect language for you.
It's very niche. It's very niche to iOS devices. Just remember that.
Cool. And then the final one on our list is TypeScript, and this is also fairly new. TypeScript is, in fact, I have it here, but I have it down on this list because I wouldn't recommend anyone learn it on their own. But if you are a JavaScript developer, you should add TypeScript to your arsenal because TypeScript is a superset of JavaScript. In fact, you need to know JavaScript before you get into TypeScript. But it basically addresses some of the problems that JavaScript has. So number one, well, this isn't really a problem, but one of the things you liked about JavaScript was that the data types, they're not.
No, I don't like that. I'm just saying that it becomes problematic.
Yeah, so
it's loosely typed.
Now with TypeScript, it's now fixed. It's typed.
Static types,
yeah,
like Java. So they made JavaScript a little more like Java.
Correct. And the other thing, this is a major advantage of TypeScript, and why a JavaScript developer would want to get into it, is that TypeScript can now pick up errors at compile time rather than at runtime. So a JavaScript developer would know that if there's an error in your code, you won't know it until something in your app breaks, and then you're going to have one heck of a time trying to find out where that error is, and that's, I think, the biggest issue I have personally.
You have to find that error in the browser, use the inspector, go through the console. But if it's a compiled language, the compiler will tell you that there's an error here. And of course, TypeScript introduces object-oriented programming into JavaScript, which is also very significant.
So yeah, every JavaScript developer, I think, should learn TypeScript because it makes developing larger scale applications using JavaScript a lot easier, and it makes maintaining those apps a lot easier as well.
Particularly if you're getting into Angular coding, if you're using the framework Angular, because Angular uses exclusively TypeScript, and Angular is a powerful JavaScript framework. Really amazing stuff, especially for very complex front-end applications and also mobile applications. Very interesting. I built my first, the app that won the App Store Award in 2012?
The arithmetic app.
The arithmetic app. That was actually built with Angular, with JavaScript on the Angular framework. Yep. But that was the early version of Angular. Now it's become amazing. It's just become a lot more powerful. Okay, there's a question here from Elton. Can XAMPP host any of the sites created on the platforms you mentioned? Can XAMPP host any of the sites created on the platforms you mentioned? I'm not sure what that question means. Elton, if you can refine your question, that'll be great. I'm not sure which sites you are talking about, but as far as I know, XAMPP is is a server for running PHP and MySQL on your local machine. So it's particularly PHP and MySQL. I don't know what else you can run on XAMPP, but I'm sure if you look it up, it'll give you more details. And interestingly enough, on Mac you don't get XAMPP, you get MEMP. MEMP is the equivalent. So Elton, I hope I answered your question. If I didn't, maybe refine your question so I can answer it. So I am Rambo. Sir, I have an off-topic question. I like off-topic questions.
I mean, I think that's one of the reasons we have these webinars, just to interact with everyone.
Okay, so I am Rambo needs advice on a laptop, a budget laptop.
Oh, lovely!
Since you're starting the course, so I am Rambo is starting the course soon. I am Rambo for coding any of these languages. I think you should aim for an i5 machine with at least how many gigs of RAM?
I would say about 4.
About
minimum
4 gigs
of
gig minimum RAM. For coding any of these languages, you simply won't go wrong. If you can get more RAM, like 8 gigs, that would be perfect. But i5 with 4 to 8 gigs RAM, do not get a Celeron, do not get an i3. Those will not perform. For these languages, you need an i5. Okay, sorry, you were saying something.
I would also recommend I don't know if I should recommend a brand specifically, but the Ideapads by Lenovo.
Yeah.
They are generally cheaper than the competitors with similar specs.
Yeah.
But they bring just as much power to the table, and they are really reliable. I mean, you'd be using that for years to come.
Yeah, and for
So-
around about 8 grand, you can get a very good i5 machine, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I remember good luck when you're signing up. If you have any issues, any challenges, just contact our support team. That's what we are here for. We're here to help you, push you across and make you into a competent developer. Because we've got competent developer students all over the world.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah.
So I think, yeah, that's a wrap of our top 10 languages, and it's just about time. We're 5 minutes over time, in fact.
There's one thing I want to finish off on, and that is, what is the price tag? How much can you possibly earn coding these languages? Now, this is the most important part, guys. This is what I love the most. As an entry-level developer, you will earn nothing less than 16,000 rands a month in South Africa. But that will only be the start, because the moment you get 1 or 2 years experience, then your salary scale starts shooting up very fast. Because remember, in South Africa, there's a shortage of developers, right? And so companies are poaching developers all the time from each other. So if a company is paying you 16 grand and you got 2 years experience, you're going to get snapped up like this by another company that will probably offer you 20, 22 grand. So you'll start at 16, maybe 17, and then you go up very quickly from there to 25. And as you become more experienced, you become a senior Java developer, you go into the 50, 60,000. And if you're an architect, now architect is like a completely different level. You're above even a software engineer. So software engineers earn about 50, 60,000. Architects earn up to 1.2 million per annum, which is about 100,000 rands a month, which is a very good salary to be earning. Now, what's great is one more thing. Hold that thought. We are introducing an add-on to Entrepreneur this year, which is the Diploma in Software Engineering, which focuses on Java. So you will, if you do Entrepreneur, you get your full qualification. That's your first year. And the second year will be the Diploma in Software Engineering, which makes you into a software engineer. So that's going to be very exciting. I'm personally designing and creating that course, just like we did with Entrepreneur. So I'm excited about that one.
Cool. Yeah. Actually, that's one of the things I wanted to mention as well, the upcoming diploma course. But yeah, other than that, that's our top 10 list of languages. And you know, I hope that closing statement by you highlighted the importance of picking one language and becoming really, really good at it. Because the better you are and more experienced you are with a specific language, the more you can charge for your services, and the more in demand you are going to be. So hopefully this list helped to illustrate some of the best options out there and what each ones are used for, and hopefully it'll help you make up your mind if you are still undecided on that.
Yeah, and the thing is, pick one. Pick one. I you know, that question was very important earlier, that do I need to learn all of these? No. Look at the top 5 list. Will you put this in the description, this list? I put it in the description below this video on YouTube. It'll come after. Look at the top 5, right? Here's my tip to you. And pick one and deep dive into it. If you want to focus on Java, then do the Entrepreneur. And then when the diploma comes, well, by the time you finish Entrepreneur, the diploma will be ready. Then you can focus on Java, where I personally teach web application development with Java. But you can't go wrong with any one of the top 5. Really, these are, we could have stopped the list there. Instead of saying top 10, we could have said top 5, and that would have been enough. So just keep that in mind. Cool.
So I don't think we have any more questions. So yeah, thanks for coming. Thank you all for coming. I hope you enjoyed this lesson, this webinar. And yeah, we'll see you next week, same time.
I hope you guys enjoyed.